little shtick here where I kind of hang around for about a minute and don't do a lot until we get some people here on the live. I know some folks will watch this. Here, I'm de-energizing my fence. Some folks will obviously watch this after we air it, but ultimately we're trying to take and interact with folks so we can kind of do a little Q&A. So yeah, so today's subject, and I'll repeat this many times as people come in and out of the chat. Today's focus is what we're doing now, or at least contemplating what we're doing now to set these guys up and ourselves for a much more productive calving season, breeding season, and our next green season, or at our growing season. So, I do a lot of lives out here at night. It's kind of when I seem to find the time to do it, but I want to show you some stuff this morning too. So not to cherry pick, just the cream of the crop all the time and show the best of the best. And, we're trying to be very transparent out here. The whole idea is to, really try and give you guys a much better picture, a little more clear about how the animals look on the daily, right? From morning to night, noon. I mean, as the bricks level in the plant increases throughout the day, the grass is more nutritive. And so come evening, they always look better than they do the following morning. So I want to show you what they look like in the morning. I just got out here. Now, some of the calves are getting super furry already. So it's kind of hard to see their condition because they're just little puff balls. But I'm going to flip the camera around. I just want to show you what the girls look like in the morning versus the evening. If you've seen some of our lives before, the cattle they're always fuller in the evenings, right? They just have better body condition. See, 970, she's showing a little rib. Here's Bruno. This is our herd sire. And yes, I still have a bull in here. Some folks will say, well, that's crazy. He could be breeding your heifers because they are about 7 months old. But I've seen zero signs of that. And these are still suckling calves, which, some people say, prevents your heifers from cycling while they're on the milk. So I think it's the, what do they call it? Progesterone. Anyway, well, state, we are in, yes, rotation is key. We are in southern Missouri. We're in the Ozarks. Let me get on the proper side so you guys have, some better sun here. We're on the shaded side, so you can't really see their condition. It's 803. She's a very fine example of an animal that keeps good condition. She's well adapted. Here's this is 511's little calf. And some might ask, well, how do you know who's who without ear tags in your calves yet? Because we haven't processed them. Well, if you spend as much time with your animals as I do, you recognize them, Here's some other really nice heifer. And that's a prospect bull right here. We actually have a couple, but I think he's the cream of the crop. We call him Spotty. When he was born, he had a couple spots on his hip, little white dots. Let's see. Have you heard about the Chinese buying them at farms? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Plus the globalist pigs, the ultra elite, super wealthy. They're absolutely buying up farms. They say control the food, control the people, right? So I'm 100% believer in that. Even fairly uneducated warlords, they understand that. So I would figure that the powers to be also understand that, right? So yeah, let's just kind of keep looking here. Again, this is transparency. I want to show you what the animals look like in the morning. So if you've ever followed us on a live before, in the evenings, the cattle always look fuller in the evenings. I'm going to show you something here while I'm on the subject, because this guy's right in front of me. Brindle, it's a bull calf. He's got a lot going for him, He's a little gaunt. He hangs a little low, but I love his ruminal capacity. He has a really giant gut, which is a great thing, right? But I'm going to show you something that just disqualifies him. He will be steered. I don't know if we can get in there and get a real good look. The selfie stick kind of makes them leery. But I want you to see, notice anything down here going on? Well, he has a very, very imbalanced scrotum. His scrotal circumference is very small. He has one testicle that hasn't descended fully, and they appear to not be even in size. So instant disqualification. He will get banded. So those are some of the things we look for, right? Now, could he someday turn into having fully developed scrotum and testicles? Maybe. Could he be a productive breeder? Maybe. But we're not willing to take that chance, right? Remember, whatever your bull is, that's half of the genetics in your herd. So if you're going to take and spend money on something, especially if you're working on your genetics, absolutely put it into your bull. Now, that being said, if you're bringing in a new bull, if you are going to keep back a farm-raised, home-raised bull off of your land, make for damn well certain that it's out of your best dam, right? Your best mama, right? She better be outstanding herself. See too many bulls get sold that they never show you actually sometimes they'll show the sire. That's a lot more common, but most times they won't show you the dam that came from. So you don't get to see mama. And that is absolutely important, right? So, camel toe or Trump? Oh, come on, Texas Holler. What do you think? Really? Did you have to ask? I'll straight up say it, Trump, 100%, 100,000%, 1,000,000%. Yeah, people can argue, oh, is he a good man? Is he not a good man? I don't know him. That doesn't matter. He's the best dude for the job, especially out of the options we have in front of us. So it's an absolute no-brainer, and I'm proud to say it, for a very, very long time. I mean, politics keep getting brought up in my lives because people ask the question, and I'm not afraid to say it. Like, it's a hot button subject, and it's getting more all the time, right? And, I didn't say much before. I kind of just let things be because, this day and age, you say the wrong thing, they just cancel you. And we are full-time social media, whatever you want to call it, influencers, entertainers, trained monkeys. And, so there is always that little bit of fear that they could cancel you and you lose your revenue stream. So that sucks. But at this point, what difference does it make if you have an income, if you lose your country, if you lose your freedom? Who gives a rat's ass about your ability to go make social media content and get paid for it on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, whatever? If you lose your freedoms doing it, you sell your soul. We're not doing that here. So whatever. If I say something and I guess they cancel us, I guess that's the way it goes. So I will try and stay on subject. I will get derailed because, there's a lot of stuff going on right now in this country that's absolutely asinine and mind-blowing, But at this point, nothing surprises me. I will put nothing past them, and there's nothing that they're not capable of doing, right? We know that. If you got your head out of the sand, you know that. You've been watching anything, I mean, especially for the last, 23 years. Since 23 years ago, that was the big eye-opening moment for me, so you can do the math and figure that out. All right, let's see here real quick. I'm going to catch back up to you. Oh, yeah, penetrometer. Absolutely. Absolutely. The judge. Let's see here. I wonder, do you watch Soilworks videos? Oh, yeah. I got my penetrometer coming. I also have a refractometer testing plant bricks, right? That's the level of the sugar content of your forage. It's ultra important to the productivity of your land and your animals. So what we understand is, like what was mentioned from the judge, penetrometer, ultra important. That tests the soil compaction. If your soil is too tight, right? It doesn't let atmospheric pressure when storms come in and high pressure systems drive atmospheric air, right, which consists of many different gases, but a very, very important one for your soil, oxygen. And it drives that into the soil, right? And then a low pressure system, as it comes out, it draws it back out of the soil. So you end up with, and that's how your soil breathes, right? It respires that way. So without those gaseous exchanges, your soil is dead. It's pretty dead. There are levels to it. You're not aerobic or anaerobic, right? Some people think that your soil is completely aerobic or anaerobic. No, there are many, many levels to it, like everything, right? There are grades and gradients, and the depth of that, right, as you increase your organic matter, your soil, you will have less compaction. The deeper you go with the less compaction, the more ability your plants have to send their roots further deep into the soil, and the further your roots can go into the soil. With a healthier, more resilient plant that creates higher Brix levels, they can exudate more or copious amounts of carbon into your soil, right? Through simple carbohydrates, even to a level of this metabolic process that happens where they actually start exudating a lipid. And those go into your soil, and that's what really builds your long life organic matter in your soil. So that is the true fertility of your soil, practical fertility, right? All those things that actually have long-term effects, unlike just surface feeding your soil. Now, we used to be amp grazers and MIG grazers, which all fall under the category of selective grazing. Selective grazing in and of itself is really, really good for individual animal performance. I can't take anything away from that. If you want the fattest cows on the planet, you let them take what they want and reject everything else, right? Take the best, reject the rest. Well, that's good for them, but it's not great for your land. So what we do here, we practice what's called the total grazing program. And it's put on by Jim Elizondo. He teaches it. Very similar teachings to Johan Zietsman, Zimbabwe, African rancher. Extremely intelligent man, both of these men. And they have a little bit different theories on it, but they're very similar, right? So similar is in the aspect of non-selective, ultra-high stock density grazing. Especially, I think Johan kind of leans more that way, and Jim's a little bit more moderate. He looks more at his animal condition and doesn't push him as hard, okay? So those are kind of the big differences from my understanding. But we've been practicing that here now for about a year, and it's made all the difference. Absolutely all the difference here in our land. Unbelievable. We're 3 to 5 times more productive in forage across all of our land. And how it kind of works, I'll try not to preach on it too much because I'm going to get to the whole point of this talk, but it allows you to harvest so much grass as you're moving forward in very small paddocks, right? Very, very small paddocks with ultra high densities, that the animals become non-selective. They don't pick and choose because of the level of competition they have. And what you see behind me, we are selective grazing right now because we're on rank forage. They will consume more of the forage. Now, the downside to that is their body condition can suffer. So the trick is keeping them on the best grass you have available on your land at all times, if you can. Harvest as much of it as you can, so that slows your rotation on your land down so much, it gives everything adequate time to recover. And it also enables you to, stockpile half of your farm. Literally, we have just under half of our farm right now stockpiled right up on this hillside. Behind me, we haven't touched that this year at all. We have not touched it since last time we grazed, that was last fall. So we're approaching 1 year of rest on it right now. And what happens is when you allow those really long periods of rest, you will see an explosion of biodiversity in your sward. Your plants will become ultra healthy, big deep root systems, tons of energy reserves, and it really, really increases your organic matter of your soil. And so our best improved areas on this land are the areas we've rested the longest. Now, there is a limitation to that. If you allow it to rest, if 1 year is good, 2 years is better, right? No, because actually what ends up happening is you do suppress new seedling growth and tillering of plants. So they don't necessarily spread out and get wider, especially your bunching grasses. And you can have dead spaces between your plants. So what we do is we rest those areas for a really long time, give the plants that are there a really great advantage, right? And then when we come through and graze, we graze everything we can off as non-selectively as possible. And if that doesn't work, meaning they leave too much behind, which they always do, I should say, if your forage is an optimum. And they'll leave stems and undesirables. And then we come behind them and we do currently mow. Every time we move off of an area, we go to a new paddock, I come back in and I cut as close to the ground as I can. Get rid of all the stems and all the old leaves and the dead vegetation. Because remember, an old leaf is not very efficient at photosynthesis first. And a stem doesn't photosynthesize at all. It actually respires. It takes energy from the plant. So you have all these old, stems, inflorescence, the seed head that comes up. And if you allow them, they'll just eat the seed off. Hey, don't come rub on me, dummy. That's my bull. He came over. He's like, give me a scratch, turd. And so we take that stuff off, right? And when in doing so, you are not giving any single plant in the sward an advantage, right? Meaning, if you selectively graze, they come in and they eat the most palatable forage. So the most desirable plants get eaten down low, and the non-desirables, your weeds or whatever else, something that was overly mature, gets a chance to stay because they don't eat it. They reject it. They move on. So what did you ultimately do? And I like to use this analogy. If you're a gardener and the only thing you ever do is go into your garden and cut back your spinach, your kale, your carrots, your whatever, your tomatoes, and you constantly are taking them off to the ground, but you never pull a weed or you never cut a weed back, what do you think is going to take over? Same idea. So let me catch up to some comments. You guys are killing me here. I love it. Let me go back here. I try to get as many questions answered as possible. You're a rancher for 40 years. Daddy was a rancher. Good. Absolutely. Thistle, taproot plants, ragweed, common ragweed, giant ragweed, thistles, Canadian thistle, musk thistle, you name them. Anything that has a big taproot is a really good indicator, just like stated, that you have compacted soils, okay? And likely calcium deficient soils. Now, taproot plants have the ability to nutrient cycle from further down, right? Because that taproot can push through that compaction. They're less prone to having issues like anaerobic environments because that taproot isn't necessarily looking for aerobic environments. It's going down and breaking. It has an ability to nutrient cycle and bring things back to the surface. So apparently, this is what I understand, this is what I'm told. Calcium is, molecularly dense and very, very heavy. So it has the ability to become highly transient, and it moves down in the layer of soil, getting deeper and deeper, further away from your plants, especially if you have low organic matter in your soil. Remember, organic matter, carbon, i.e. carbon, long life, long cycle carbon, has the ability to kind of hold everything together, keep everything in place, buffer pH, create a favorable growing conditions and environment for everything, right? The plants, the microbiology of the soil. Hey, girl. Got a little calf coming up to check me out. She's a beautiful little thing right there. She's a good-looking heifer. And so if you don't have organic matter in your soil, you just kind of have nothing. You're just always chasing your tail, and that's why you're adding fertilizers and, lots of inputs, and you just never really, truly correct it. So, okay. Let me get back to some of these questions, see if I can answer. You have 10 acres of grassland. Okay, you got 10 acres of grassland. What kind of grass do you know? What part of the country are you in? Things that I would want to know if I was in that, I would definitely research your annual precipitation, your type of soil you have. But I will say this. I don't know that you can beat a ruminant, cattle. Now, we have a few sheep, and I've got some friends, a pretty good friend I've made here on YouTube. He's also a content creator. He runs many hundreds of heads of sheep, and I think we agree, but it really comes from his side because he has way more experience, obviously, with sheep. I only have a couple, and I don't really know anything about them. But the bigger the animal, to a certain extent, they just do so much for the land per pound, right? Because they have the ability to really impact that soil. They really do. There's a big difference. Like after sheep come through, my little sheep, they just pick some grass off and it's like they were never there besides their pellets they leave behind, And where the cattle and the horses, they come in, you can really see the impact. They really help to break cap soil and push organic matter down tight to the surface of the soil and some other things like that. So I would definitely say look into cattle if you can. And if you only have 10 acres, don't go out and get some giant breed, right? Some huge frame, a 6 frame, a 7, like these monsters, 1,500 to 2,500 pound cattle. get yourself some little cattle, right? Maybe some Dexters or something like that that are just really small framed, and you can have more of them. You can actually have a little mini herd, right? Otherwise, you know, the reality is you probably won't be able to carry more than a couple of giant cattle on there, right? All right. Illinois. All right. All right. Good job. Do it. Oh, yeah. I couldn't live in California. I've been there a couple times in the last decade, boy, and it's just crazy. Eddie. Hey, Eddie. That's cool. You're an idiot. Oh, my gosh. I don't pull punches. People say stupid stuff on lives. They're morons. Sorry. You're in Texas. Oh, yeah. We're there again. Okay. So what we're talking about, really, I want to get into is what we're looking at right now going forward in this, you know, late summer, early fall. And what we need to start thinking about is what we're going to do next year, because everything we do now affects next growing season, next calving season, next breeding season. It all has, you know, this long lingering effect. So I'll back up and say what we used to do. And boy, were we making, we were making all the mistakes. So we used to mid graze and amp graze, like I said before. And what we would do, we get out there, and it was advised, you know, there's many grazers out there who'll tell you this in the spring, when you're in that spring flush, to just get out there and move your animals really, really fast and tip the grass and kind of zoom around your land. Well, that does a couple things. It scours your animals, which can give them ruminal acidosis, which can cause a myriad of health issues for them later on. And you're grazing that fresh grass off that is coming out of dormancy, right? And that's all energy reserve driven. And so you're taking the top of that plant off and you're setting it back. And then you race around your farm, and then you get back to the beginning before it's fully recovered. And so those grasses, you hurt them, they're not fully recovered, and then you don't really have a choice because you don't have anywhere else to go, so you graze them again. And that further hurts them and sets them back. And then you race around the farm even faster, and you're back to the beginning again. And then you hit a drought, and then so on and so forth. And it just kind of hyper accelerates this problem, and it just spirals out of control until you're just out of grass, okay? That's what we used to do. We were following the advice. Now, so through a strange set of circumstances, we, you know, overgrazed some areas, and then I said, oh my gosh, we have to rest those areas now. And so we gave them really long rest periods. And so ultimately what we were doing, and without even knowing we were doing it, we were kind of practicing the total grazing system program. And we saw massive improvements in those areas. So I was like, oh my gosh. So when I started hearing this crazy snake oil talk of total grazers and Jim Elizondo and all this stuff, I wasn't so shut off to it and closed-minded. And I do really try to consider myself a very open-minded person. Like, I will consider all things, and then I will hopefully have the discernment to pick out the BS, right? So it allowed me to listen more and really kind of pay attention. And sure enough, I'm like, okay, this is starting to make sense. The things that Jim was saying about like these really long rest periods for your land and higher harvest efficiency of your animals, yada, yada. And so that's what we started doing. And man, and then I just said, okay, I'm all in. I stopped kind of, you know, putting my toe in the water, and we just jumped all in, went to this grazing program immediately, this whole system, and then just went for it. And it really has, it's transformed our land. So we were racing around the farm, going back, ran out of grass. Well, the difference now that we did this year, I knew finally, and I hadn't even researched it, I just knew from what I observed that was fallacy, right? So I said, screw it, I had enough hay this spring, and we held our animals back, and I fed them out. We did, we just put them in the sacrifice paddock. And it was just a really rough piece of junk, old power line access lane. And I fed them out there for an additional month. We kept our animals back about a month longer than anybody I saw in this whole area. And it's tough. You know, you're sitting there going, oh man, look at that grass coming up. I want to get my cattle on that beautiful grass, and everybody else is grazing. Oh. Well, I stuck to my guns. We fed all the rest of the hay we had. and we held our cattle back. We let the grass on our farm get a fighting chance, got up, started to get mature enough to when we grazed it, we weren't scouring our animals and the plant already had some pretty good energy reserves. So it had an ability to recover what it lost from that initial spring green up where it was using its energy reserves to push up new blades and then start collecting sun and then start cycling that energy and storing it in its roots. So that's what we did. And that in and of itself, if there's nothing else that you do, if you don't even want to try total graze or whatever, you know, that is probably one bit of advice I could give anybody that you should implement in your grazing management strategy. Absolutely stop getting out there so early in the spring. If you manage your land right, you should have stockpile left. Your animals should still be on stockpile come spring green up, so you still have a good, you know, carbon ratio. You're not giving them too much sugar, too much energy, too much protein without enough fiber, and you should have them better balanced. And they just kind of just nicely just transition into those grasses instead of going from old nasty low quality hay to rocket fuel, right? It's hard on their system. So you still want to be on that stockpile and graduating back into those spring grasses that are now finally mature enough to graze them properly without scouring your animals. So again, takeaway, if nothing else you guys do, if you have land, cattle, whatever, do that, right? That'll also keep you from, if you have horses, you won't founder your horses in the spring. We keep our horses on grass 365 days a year. I've had so many people over the years just blown away that we have horses and we keep them on grass. Like, that's crazy to them. They just can't understand or comprehend. They feed hay, they feed mixed rations, they feed pellets, they feed high performance feeds, all this stuff, grain bases. We feed no grain, like zero grain to our horses and cattle. We feed them, if we have to, sometimes and only sometimes, a little bit of protein supplement, right? It allows especially the ruminants to have the additional protein that they require to ruminate so they can make better use of this nasty old rank forage and they won't lose body condition, right? It allows us to harvest more of the available forage, even though it's low quality, and they can convert that and turn that into energy and put on pounds of beef for pennies a day per animal. Now, do we have to give them protein every day? No. It all depends on the quality of the forage. If your forage is really bad and there's nothing new in it, and say it's season long, it's dormant, most of the protein's fallen out of it, it's warm season grasses, very little cool season grasses, you're gonna have to feed the heck out of the protein to get them to be able to use it. But if you have a lot of cool season grasses in there, and this is the one beautiful thing about fescue, and it's the only thing about fescue that I like, honestly, is that it stockpiles really, really well. And it'll grow when nothing else will, right? It'll grow down to damn near freezing temperatures. It just kind of keeps growing. I'll see that stuff grow through the whole winter unless, you know, it's 5 degrees, 10 degrees with snow on the ground. That stuff will continue growing. Other than that, I don't really like fescue because of the toxicity that it gives the cattle, right? Well, this is Kentucky 31, so it has an endophyte in it. It's highly toxic in the summer. So, you know, it takes a different level of management. You have to really watch your cattle so you're not poisoning them, right? So, let's see. You don't graze in the spring till the grass is 8 inches. Okay. What kind of grass do you have? First off, I'd be curious to know that. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you you're wrong. I'm always trying to gather information. I don't go typically by a measurement. What we do is we just kind of watch it, and I start looking at it like it's tearaway, grab it and see if it's a little more lignified, or it's tall enough that it's starting to flop over. I just kind of watch that. I'll put the animals on it, and if they start scouring a little bit, you know, I'll give them some hay if I have it. And but yeah, you know, we're predominantly fescue in the spring. We got some Kentucky bluegrass in here among a few others, but yeah, I don't know that I've actually ever measured the height and really paid attention to that. I just kind of really watched the manure score. I would say that's probably my one and only indicator I really pay attention to when we're grazing. So let's see, Timothy. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, you know, we have a little bit of Timothy around here. It's starting to show up in the sward. We have, obviously, oh yeah, I forgot to mention we have orchard grass. So we have some Timothy that I've seen. We're really starting to see a lot more warm season grasses from these long rested, you know, stockpiled areas. I'm going to flip this around and show you what this stockpile is looking like. And yes, there is some broom sedge up there still, but you know, that doesn't really bother me. You know, there's some broom sedge right there. It's just kind of a sprinkling of it. Now, when we bought this place, I'll have you know that it looked like a wheat farm. There was so much broom sedge, right? The unmolested areas, if you didn't touch them, the broom sedge came in like 100+ bushel acre wheat. It was it was crazy. It was like the most beautiful wheat field you ever seen. So that's really starting to go out because due to competition, right? Now, I have never grazed that hillside. I have not yet grazed that hillside in ultra high stocking densities. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens to that area up there as another experiment. But I can tell you all the other places that I have grazed at ultra high stock densities when the broom sedge is not going to seed yet like that, where it's totally lignified junk. The cattle, they graze it pretty good, but more like the really cool thing is my horses, when they eat it down, it gets about that close, that last bite they take, they actually uproot the whole plant. And I'll find thousands of them on top of the ground. They'll actually non-selectively graze them right out, weed them out of the ground, and they're laying on top. It's crazy. So in one grazing pass down in this other field on this other side of this creek, I mean, we probably decreased our broom sedge just with intensive grazing pressure by more than 50% in one pass. It was quite astounding. So broom sedge is just another warm season grass, right? It's not a desirable one because it's so low in nutritive value, and plus it's an indicator species that you have poor soil. Doesn't really grow well in really fertile soils, right? And it doesn't do very well in high competition. So it's easy to smother out. And the way to get rid of it is non-selective grazing, right? So once again, you're taking everything to a clean slate. You're gonna graze it off or mow it off, and then long rest periods. So what happens in the spring on these unmolested areas, ungrazed, untouched areas like this hillside here, we saw an immediate reduction in broom sedge this year because, not from ultra high grazing pressure up there, but because we didn't graze it all in the spring, the cool season grasses had the opportunity to express themselves, get tall, and shade out and outcompete so much of that broom sedge, that the broom sedge that did come in, came in pretty thin, and it's not very robust looking. It really hurt it. So, you know, just some little management tools like that has really helped us. So we're, like I said, we're seeing a reduction in that alone from the long rest periods, allowing it to be outcompeted, and then heavy grazing pressure on top of that. Big difference. Now, something else we did here, we do practice low inputs. We preach it. My goal is to put the least amount of inputs into our land that we can, but still be productive and have good, healthy animals, right? And have land that produces. I'm not saying zero inputs. There's guys out there that'll tell you, never spend $1 on any of this stuff. All you gotta do is buy my magic cow. This magic cow right here will do magic, and you're gonna have unbelievable land in 3 years. That is not true. Can you increase or improve your land quality and productivity with animals and animals alone? Absolutely. Is it gonna take a really long time? Yeah, it is, it does. You know, a lot of these guys are still working on their ground, and it's been 20 years, it's been 30 years, and they still haven't really reached like, man, I'm really happy with where my land is. So I believe that really comes from selective grazing. It's not really allowing the rest periods that are required to really build your soil. So again, this isn't for an argument. This isn't to tell anybody they're doing stuff wrong. This is just to, man, I keep having to put my shades on, to help maybe give people an idea that there might be another possibility, something else to consider. All right, I'm going to get back here. Let's see. An aerator. You know, that will work for some folks for sure. Not so much for us here. Sometimes it takes me like 5 minutes and 10 cuss words to put one step in stake in the ground because we have so many rocks. So even like a penetrometer is almost, I don't know, I don't even know if I can actually use one and get a real reading, because you almost can't find a single spot on this ground that you're not going to hit a rock. So, I mean, I've been in the dirt business, an excavator, for years and years, and I've dug around in this stuff enough to know that this is one of the highest rock to silt or clay ratio soils I've ever seen in my entire life. The Ozarks are rocky. Man, they are rocky. So yeah, most cultivation equipment, it just breaks it to hell. And yeah, aerators and stuff like that, they just bounce off those giant rocks that are in the ground and break the equipment up. So now I will tell you that one thing that has really, really helped us with compaction in our soil, and I got to give them credit, you know, is we put Agritech Internationals. So Agritech International is yes, they are a fertilizer company. They sell conventional liquid fertilizers, and they also sell biologicals and calcium and that kind of stuff. And that's what we put on this. We put Advanced Cal and a few other of their products on here. It was awesome. They sent them to us as literally a test. Here you go. See how they work for you. So that was a huge blessing, because that can add up really fast, you know. And it made an amazing improvement in our grasses and our soil compaction. So we haven't had rain now for, oh geez, let's see, what has it been? 3 weeks, going on 3 weeks, something like that. And we were very, very dry before that. So we hadn't had rain 6 weeks before that. So this late summer, early fall session we're getting into, it has been very dry for us. And my soil is still not hard, where the prior year and the year before that, there was no getting a stake in the ground. I mean, I have piles of stakes that are just bent like pretzels, you know, trying to get those in the ground over the years. So we've seen a major change with that. We added humic acid, ProCal. What else? They sent us a biological stimulator. You know, they're just micronutrients. So we have seen that really, really help us. So absolutely, if you can afford it, I would look at adding something like that to your soil. Definitely do your soil samples. Don't just blindly apply it. You're going to need to know your base saturation levels. Sorry, this is like heading to the auction. All right, man. Good luck. Don't spend too much. So, I want to point out. So, if anybody is interested in learning more about this grazing system or method that we do here, it is a hot button subject for sure. We have a grazing school here, Alton, Missouri, our ranch, Tick Creek Ranch, this November 7th and 8th, and it's going to be hosted by us, but taught by Jim Elizondo, meaning I'm going to sit there and he's going to tell you guys what you need to do. And then we're going to do some field walks and go around the land here, and we're going to show you, he's going to show you the things we're doing right, the things we're doing wrong, where we can improve. And hopefully that'll be a really great takeaway for a lot of folks to start understanding this and how they can implement it in their own system. So I want to tell you, so I've told you, you know, how much more productive we are and all that. But here's the reality. If I did my numbers right, if I did my survey here on my forage right, we should not have to feed a single bale of hay this year. And last year we had to feed 74 rounds. We have that much grass just because of grazing management changes. Now, did we have more rain early this summer? Absolutely, sure we did. But there's also many people in this area that got the exact same amount of rain, and they still don't have very much grass, right? They have more grass than they used to in prior years or compared to drought years, but they don't have as much grass as we do. And it's really just because of management, folks. So it just takes a completely different train of thought and how you're going to manage your land. And I had to re-educate myself because I read all the books and I followed all the gurus for years and years. And I kind of had to, you know, retrain myself, re-educate myself. And okay, all right, I know this seems like crazy talk, but I'm going to try it. And almost every person that I've come across that has implemented these techniques has seen tremendous improvements in their land, and they're all about it now. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm never going back to selective grazing. Now, that being said, we do selectively graze at times. I'm selectively grazing right now, right? So we got to make sure that we don't always consider the total grazing program or total grazers and confuse that with only non-selective grazing and non-selective grazing all the time, or ultra high stock densities only and all the time. That's not the case. They're just tools in the toolbox, and we learn how to use them when it's appropriate. That's really all it is to it. So it's kind of it's basically all the different grazing management and techniques other than set stocking and conventional grazing. Other than those, it's all of them combined and learning how to use them when it's appropriate, right? So we got a couple more comments here. Yeah, absolutely. Mushrooms grow in manure. Yep, absolutely. So so what we're doing now, like I said, I got ADHD. I'm sure I see a butterfly and I take off. So I'll try and come back to what we were trying to get to. So what we're doing now, and this is where my mind is, I have to be considering what we're going to be doing now and how that's going to affect winter, and then how that's going to affect spring, and then into our calving season and our breeding season, right? So I'll lay this out pretty simply. The condition of the cattle right now is absolutely acceptable. We're going into winter, and as we get closer, I'm going to be weaning these guys here pretty soon. I'm just going to probably put weaning clips or plates on their nose and keep them with their moms to lessen stress. You know, we're not going to try and fence line, wean, or separate them to another pen. It's too stressful. And we're going to see how that works. And then that will allow the moms, the mothers here that are currently lactating and have suckling calves on them, to further put on better condition, right, through winter. So we're going to go into the time of year, winter, when the nutrition of the grass is lowest. So we want to make sure that their nutritional requirements are also less, right? So we're going to wean our calves off, because come calving, when it's time for these moms to put their babies on the ground, the condition that they have at that time pretty much is the one indicator, or the biological condition that they have, that is going to dictate when and how soon they breed back, if at all, okay? So you gotta have really fat cows during calving for them to be able to breed back. Well, why? Because it's the associated amount of body fat content that your cattle have that dictates whether they will be able to cycle back, because they have to have body fat to create estrogen. And without it, they won't cycle and they can't get bred inside your breeding season. Now, you'll see cattle that miss, right, in some operations, and then they just re-expose them in the fall and breed them then, right, or in the winter. And so what ends up happening, you lose that one calving breeding season every year, and it kind of moves forward and moves forward and moves forward, and pretty soon you have a breeding calving season that's stretched out all across the year, all the way from you're dropping calves on the ground from the first of the year to December. You know, I mean, it's just a mess. So we're trying to avoid that, but that being said, if I messed up and if I didn't keep good enough condition on these girls this spring, learning this new grazing method, and I was pushing them hard because we were really, really focused on finding that balance between animal condition and improving our land. And if I screwed up and one of them went open inside of our 42 or 45 day breeding season, well, I wasn't going to miss a calf. We need more animals here. We're understocked and we just need more. And I'm not a rich guy that can just go out and buy a whole bunch more cows. So regardless, we kept our bull in, and he's still in. So he will get those girls as they cycle. Well, that's going to screw us up a little bit in the future breeding seasons, but I'd rather have one out of season, I suppose, or a couple, and then catch them back in subsequent year or two, than completely miss altogether and miss the opportunity of having another calf. So that's my theory about it anyway. So yeah, so to kind of recap, we are planning right now for what the condition of our cattle will be during calving. and what condition they're going to have then, so that then they have the proper condition after they calve, because you're going to lose at least one body score condition, or body condition score, right? So when they calve, there's an immense amount of nutritional requirement for them, and they will lose condition. So you're going to lose at least one. Remember that. So if they say they calve at a 5, well, by the time they're ready to be bred and they're supposed to be breeding, they're going to be a 4, and they're not going to breed back, or a 4 to a 3, right? So you want to be calving at a 7 if you can, or an 8. So you're only dropping one score, and they'll breed right back. Boom, no problem. And you stay on that cycle. So again, we just have to, it's, you know, this is a big learning experience for us. We're not like career cattlemen that have been doing this forever. We're first generation. Yes, my grandfather, he had cattle, but he was I got cows, there's grass, cows eat grass, go have at it, right? He was not a cattleman, he had cattle. So, you know, there was nothing really to learn there. And his poor cattle looked very, very poor. I love the man to death. He was a great man, but he wasn't worth a damn for handling, raising cattle. So let's see, anybody else popping on here? Let's see. Good night. All right, good night. You must be somewhere. That's not here, unless you work nights or something. So yeah, you know, we get some questions on keeping our horses with the cattle and if there's any problems there. And honestly, no, there just really isn't. It's so rare that there's anything. Yes, I mean, I say that. We did have a calf the other day that has a bite on him. But, you know, he learned. He won't get near that horse again and get in its way. So, is it ideal? No, but it's not a big deal. It's part of the pecking order. Yeah, horses are definitely alpha in our herd, and they make the cattle move, but everybody gets along really good. And it's kind of funny, they're all buddies, honestly. But, you know, horses bite each other too, so it's not like they're just picking on the cattle. Our horses and cattle bond together so much that when we just have like a couple horses and a couple cattle, say in another paddock, because of, you know, say Bruno, we're going to use him for instance, that's our herd sire. We kept him when we didn't want him breeding, obviously, the girls, with a couple of our horses that were actively being trained up front. And if you took the horses away from him, he would bellow like a baby. Oh my gosh, he would scream his brains out, my friends. So yeah, they'll bond. They're all part of the same herd, even though, you know, they're different species, so it's not a problem. Yeah, oh buddy, you got into a bunch of them damn birds. This guy right here, he is absolutely covered in them. They're wild carrot seeds. They just, these little tiny burr type seed. He's got about 1,000 of them on his head. He'll go scratch them off later. But okay, so again, November 7th and 8th, grazing school here. If you want to attend, you want to know more information about it, in the description of this live, there's a link to Jim's site where you can register, you can ask more questions. You can always reach out to us at Tick Creek Ranch 417@gmail.com with more questions about anything. And that's about probably it for the talk today, guys, unless you got any more questions. I got some stuff to go do, got some more content to make. We are preparing to go to Eastern Tennessee and help with some of the effort there, to help those folks there if we can at all. You know, we have some companies that I've reached out to, and they're going to donate to the cause. So they're going to send us over there with some goods to take to those folks. So that's super awesome. I'm really pumped about that. And we're going to probably film some content over there to just kind of show everybody where the recovery effort is, what happened, and, you know, currently what the needs are of those folks. So if anybody out there wants to know more about that, again, you can reach out to us. Like I said, we're going to be posting content, and we're going to do what we can. Like I said, I'm, you know, had an excavation business for years, got a lot of heavy equipment operating time and experience, so we're going to try and go put some of that to use. My boys are all really handy, good carpenters, good mechanics, so we're going to go over there and do what we can. We'll see. So really feel for those folks over there. So if anybody out there that feels so inclined, please do something for those people. You know, they're absolutely decimated. I don't know if you've been watching this on social media, because, you know, the mainstream news sure as hell ain't covering it. It's terrible. Those people are absolutely in shambles. So yeah, any effort will be much appreciated by all those folks over there. So anyway, we sure appreciate you guys hanging around, and we will see you soon on the next one here at Tick Creek Ranch.